On a Tuesday morning in October, a man named Daniel sat at his kitchen table, sipping his coffee, reading his phone, completely relaxed, completely confident. He had no idea that in exactly 48 hours, everything he had built on top of his wife's silence, her patience, and her pain was going to be taken from him piece by piece. He thought he had won. He thought she had given up. He was wrong about both. I want you to remember this image. A man, comfortable, unbothered, sitting in a kitchen his wife furnished, drinking from a mug she bought in a house she kept. And somewhere across town, she was already 3 moves ahead of him. Stay with me, because this story does not go where you think it's going. Her name was Claire, and if you had met Claire 5 years ago, at 31 years old, you would have met someone who genuinely believed she had everything. A beautiful home in a quiet suburb outside of Nashville, a career she had worked 12 years to build as a senior architect at a respected firm, and a husband named Daniel, charming, funny, the kind of man who always knew the right thing to say in a room full of people. They had met in college, married at 27. She had turned down a job offer in New York to stay close to her family. She had postponed a promotion twice because the timing didn't work with his career moves. She had done what millions of women do without anyone ever asking. She made herself smaller so his life could be bigger. She didn't resent it, at least not at first, because Daniel was good to her, or so she believed. The cracks appeared slowly, the way they always do. A phone that was always face down on the table. Weekend work trips that started happening every single month. A password on his laptop that hadn't been there the year before. Small things, the kind of things you notice and then tell yourself you're imagining, because the alternative is something you're not ready to face. Claire noticed. She told herself she was imagining it. Then one evening in March, she wasn't imagining it anymore. She had come home early from a conference, her flight rerouted, no warning. She walked through her front door at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, dropped her bag in the hallway, and heard voices upstairs. 2 voices, one of them was Daniel's. The other one, she recognized too. It was her closest friend, a woman named Melissa, someone who had been in their wedding, someone who had sat at their Christmas table every year for the last 6 years. Claire did not go upstairs. She stood in that hallway for what she later described as the longest 4 minutes of her life. And then she did something that I think speaks to exactly the kind of woman she is. She picked up her bag, walked back out the front door, got in her car, and drove to a parking lot 3 blocks away, and she sat there. And she thought, not about how much it hurt, though it hurt in a way she said she could feel physically, like something cold pressing down on her chest. She thought about what she was going to do about it, because Claire is not a woman who reacts. She's a woman who plans. She drove to a hotel that night, told Daniel her flight was delayed. He said, "And I want you to remember this." He said, "That's a shame, babe. I miss you." He said that, while Melissa's perfume was probably still in the air of their bedroom. I need to stop here for a second, because I think what Claire did in that parking lot, the choice not to storm back in, not to scream, not to confront, that is one of the most powerful decisions a person can make when they've been broken. She gave herself time to think instead of time to react, and that decision, that's what made everything that came next possible. Over the next 2 weeks, Claire confirmed everything. She hired a private investigator, not to catch Daniel for a dramatic confrontation, but to document dates, times, locations, photographs. She wanted a paper trail that was airtight. The investigator delivered. The affair had been going on for 14 months. 14 months, nearly a year and a half. While she cooked dinners and attended his work events, and smiled at Melissa across restaurant tables. But here is where Claire's story separates itself from most betrayal stories I have ever heard. She didn't leave, not yet. She went home, she kissed her husband on the cheek, she sat across from him at dinner, and she started building. What Claire built over the next 24 months was not revenge in the explosive, dramatic sense. It was something quieter and far more permanent. First, she called a divorce attorney, not to file, not yet, to understand exactly what she was entitled to under Tennessee law. She learned that in a divorce, the marital home, their joint investments, and a significant portion of Daniel's income would be considered shared assets. She learned what documentation she would need. She learned the process from start to finish. Then she did something most people would never think to do. She went back to work. Fully. For the first time in years, Claire stopped making herself small. She took the promotion she had declined twice. She started building her own client list on the side, quietly within the rules of her contract. She reconnected with the New York firm that had offered her a position 6 years earlier. They were still interested. She opened a personal bank account, separate, private, and every month very carefully, she transferred a portion of her income into it. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would raise flags, just building. She also, and this is important, stopped confiding in mutual friends. She quietly, gradually started building new friendships. A colleague named Patricia, a neighbor named Ruth, women who had no connection to Daniel, women who would not consciously or accidentally let anything slip. She was building a life, a parallel life, right underneath Daniel's nose. 2 years. She lived with this man for 2 years, knowing what he had done. Some people would call that weakness. I call it the most disciplined, strategic thing I have ever heard. Because she wasn't waiting to hurt him. She was making sure that when she walked away with everything she deserved, and he was left with the consequences of every single choice he had made. There is a difference between revenge and justice. Claire wasn't interested in revenge, she wanted justice, and she was going to get it legally, completely and permanently. There was one moment, where Claire almost broke. It was their anniversary, their 9th. Daniel took her to the restaurant where they had their first date. He gave her a card, handwritten, 3 paragraphs. He told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He held her hand across the table and looked at her with what she said looked exactly like love. She told me that was the hardest night of those 2 years. Not because she doubted herself, but because she realized that Daniel genuinely believed everything was fine. He had compartmentalized so completely, so selfishly, that he could sit across from the woman he was betraying and feel nothing but comfort. She smiled at him across that table. She thanked him for the card. She ordered dessert. And the next morning she called her attorney and said, "I'm ready." Daniel came home on a Thursday evening to find 3 things: an envelope on the kitchen table, a note that said, "Have your attorney call mine," and Claire's wedding ring placed on top of the envelope. Not thrown, not left carelessly, placed deliberately, precisely. Claire was already gone. She had moved that morning into a furnished apartment she had quietly rented 2 months prior, in a building close to her office. Inside the envelope were the divorce papers already filed, along with a USB drive containing 14 months of documented evidence compiled by the private investigator. Every date, every location, photographs, hotel receipts, everything. Also in the envelope, a letter to Melissa. Claire had hand-delivered a copy to Melissa's workplace that same afternoon. Daniel called Claire 47 times that evening. She answered once. She said 4 words, "Talk to my lawyer," and she hung up. The divorce proceedings took 4 months. Daniel's attorney tried several angles. None of them landed. The documentation was too thorough. The financial preparation was too complete. Claire had done everything right. The settlement awarded Claire the marital home, which she sold 3 months later and used as a down payment on a property in New York. She received a significant portion of their joint investments. And because Tennessee law considers documented infidelity in alimony decisions, she received 3 years of support payments while she fully transitioned her career. Daniel kept his car, his clothes, and a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment he had to sign alone. As for Melissa, the letter Claire had delivered was not angry. It was not cruel, it was simply factual. A timeline, dates, the nature of the relationship, copied to Melissa's husband, who Claire had quietly, separately contacted the week before. Melissa's marriage ended within the month. And here is the detail that I think about every time I tell this story. Claire never once posted about it, never told their mutual friends what happened, never explained herself publicly. She simply disappeared from that life, quietly and completely, and rebuilt somewhere new. The people in their social circle found out the way these things always eventually come out, through Daniel's own behavior, his own explanations, his own attempts to justify what he had done. He told the story. She never had to. I've thought about Claire's story a lot since I first heard it. And the thing that stays with me is not the legal outcome. It's not the settlement or the apartment, or even the justice of Melissa's marriage ending. It's what Claire said when I asked her if she had any regrets about the 2 years she spent planning rather than leaving immediately. She said, "I spent 12 years making decisions based on what was best for us. Those 2 years were the first time in my adult life I made decisions based entirely on what was best for me. I don't regret a single day of them. 2 years of silence, 2 years of patience, 2 years of building something so complete, so thorough that when she finally moved, there was nothing left for him to take. Nothing left for him to use, nothing left that belonged to him that she still needed. She walked away whole. He was left with the exact amount she decided to leave him with, which was the direct consequence of every choice he made. That to me is not revenge. That is precision. Now I want to hear from you, because this story divides people every time I tell it. Some people say Claire was completely justified, that the 2 years of patience were not weakness but strategy, and that the outcome reflects exactly what Daniel deserved. Others say she should have left immediately, that staying, even strategically, prolonged her own pain unnecessarily. So tell me in the comments, was Claire's approach the right one, or would you have done something differently? And if this story hit you the way it hit me, subscribe to Scorned and Served, because every week we bring you the stories that remind you nobody gets away with betrayal forever. I'll see you in the next one.